Well, hey everybody, and I am so excited to be here to introduce to you the Reverend Colin Bagby. Colin is going to be the lead pastor for our new worship and discipleship community, new modern worship and discipleship community, and I have been so excited, ready to introduce him to you and to let us get started on what God has next for us here at St. Luke's. So welcome to St.
Thanks,
Luke's
Tom.
and
Thank
our church family
Yeah.
and our staff community. So tell us about you. Where are you from?
I'm from Russellville, Arkansas, which is a small town in northwest-ish Arkansas, about 25,000 people, so not far from Little Rock and not
Wow.
far from Fayetteville, so kind of in between both of those places.
So
yeah.
by Arkansas standards, is that a dinky town or is that?
Actually, Russellville is pretty big time
pretty
in Arkansas.
big time in Arkansas,
Yeah.
huh?
When I thought Little Rock was big when I was growing up, so yeah, but it's for Arkansas it's pretty big. So.
I'll avoid the Arkansas jokes.
Yeah, it's okay.
About
I
that.
mask it pretty well, like I don't have an accent or anything. So.
No,
Yeah.
not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
You do pretty well.
Yeah.
So, and tell us about your family and a little. So, one of our we have 5 inside out habits here at St. Luke's, and one of them is we tell our stories.
Yeah.
And we don't have an hour here, so just a little of your story. Tell us about your family and how you came to Christ, maybe.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Russellville, like I said, and I have 2 sisters. I have an older sister and a twin sister. So that's a particular part of my story. I have a twin, and so had a companion and a partner in crime growing up. So they live on the East Coast now, but yeah, I grew up in Russellville, and my parents, my dad's a photographer, my mom was a teacher, and so kind of
photographer.
Yeah, I have a creative team in my family, and just creative people, and grew up loving music and being part of musical groups and played music with my friends and stuff in Arkansas. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I grew up. I went to college in Arkansas as well. I went to Hendrix College, which is a small Methodist college
school,
there, about 1,500 students. And then from there, I went to seminary in Atlanta at Candler in Atlanta and at Emory University. But while I was in college, I met my wife, Landon, and we were in chapel band together and kind of in the same friend group, and started dating when I was a senior and she was a junior. And then got married after we moved back to Arkansas when I started being a pastor there. When I moved back to Arkansas and I was commissioned after seminary. So she's a Montessori teacher here in Houston, and she teaches primary age students, so 3 to 6 year olds, like 25 of them. So she's a patient, persistent, kind, compassionate person. So I learn a lot from her in those areas. And so we moved to Houston just a few years ago and have loved living here. As far as my faith story or my coming to Christ, as I was raised in the church. Both of my parents were part of other traditions, and then eventually ended up at the Methodist Church in Russellville when they moved there.
What other traditions?
They were both Church of Christ.
Oh, interesting.
Both left that later on for different reasons. And then the funny story about it is they had actually been attending a Presbyterian church in Russellville because one of my dad's friends went there. And one morning they woke up and realized there had been a storm and that the power had gone out. And they didn't wake up in time to go to the service at the Presbyterian church, but the Methodist church, their service was a little later, so they ended up going there, and it stuck. So that's where I grew up.
God works in amazing ways.
He
That's
does,
right.
he does. And
yeah.
And I have very vivid memories of begging and pleading my parents to just let us go to Sunday school and to not go to big church afterward. But then grew a really close relationship with my youth pastor there at the time. Our pastor's son was my best friend growing up and had a close connection to the church. And just was really raised by and mentored by people that had deep faith, and then really captured it for myself and came into my own in my faith in high school and in college when I was playing music with people and just reading some formative books and hearing some formative stories about Jesus was for the outcast and Jesus was for the people on the margins, and that Jesus was for people that felt alone and were longing for relationship. And I found that community and relationship in others and people that walked alongside me and cared for me and shared the good news about Jesus with me.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah.
That's awesome. So we're going to be planting a new faith community here, and that's part of St. Luke's. What is most exciting for you about that?
I'm a numbers guy. I like numbers and figures and maps and stuff like that. And one thing that stands out to me is that you look at these like Barna numbers or people that study, church growth and new communities for new people, is that the most people that become Christians for the first time become Christians in these new communities that are popping up all over the country. And so that's exciting for me, and that creating new places for new people, I think, we're in the Advent season right now, this incarnational, embodied way that we move into a neighborhood, we live in a neighborhood and connect with people where they are, and it resonates with people. It has unique identity. It speaks to the problems and issues that they might be having. And that's really exciting to me, is that Jesus, his message is for everyone, and new places for new people helps engage that for people that may not be familiar with church, may have left church for some reason, may be burned by the church for they may not be coming for good reason. And these new communities, these new places that we can invite people into relationship with Jesus, it kind of speaks to them directly and invites them to have their own unique identity and to grow together wherever they are.
Why do you think people, and I was going to say young people, but it's not just young people by any stretch of the imagination. Why do you think people find churches, traditional churches like St. Luke's, why do some people, let me get real clear,
Yeah, sure.
find it sort of ho-hum? I mean, like what, why do they don't, it's not so much that they're like, no, but it's just like, I'm not going to bother.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things there. One is that we kind of maybe assume that we still live in like a majority Christian culture, and we don't really anymore. Right. That there's a lot that we assume that people know, lingo, terms that we use, spaces that we occupy, traditions that we have, rituals that we do that feel kind of exclusive, that people don't feel brought in and welcome. Not that people are being rude to them or something like that, but it feels like it's for a certain group of people and not for them, and that kind of is exclusive in some way.
Kind of a Christianese.
Yeah. So like they use the lingo, and it's off-putting in some way. That too, alongside that more and more people. It's not that people are not interested in spiritual things. People are really interested in spirituality and disciplines and practices. It's that the church has an opportunity to lean more into that, invite people into spiritual practice, and that people are finding that elsewhere. They're experiencing maybe an exclusivistic sort of community in the church, and then they find spiritual community and discipline and practice somewhere else that allows them to get their hands dirty or to learn something new, be tied to something ancient and real, and that's something that speaks to their life.
What do you mean by get their hands dirty?
I think by get their hands dirty, I mean, be in service with one another. So, we hear the term justice used a lot these days. Like people want to seek out ways that the world can become a more equal and welcoming and justice-driven place, that people feel like that there is a home for them, that they are welcome in their communities and neighborhoods, and that they can work to see people fed and people clothed and people sheltered, and so to be in service alongside one another.
Do you think they actually do that, or do they want to do that?
The tough question. Yeah. I think there's probably a mix of both. That there are people that may talk about it more than they actually are involved in it, because I think
post it on their Facebook, on their Instagram, and all that. Yeah.
And I think like St. Luke's or any number of the great churches we have here in the city have a multitude of opportunities to get involved. And I think from a pastoral perspective, it's kind of frustrating when those opportunities present themselves, and those same folks may not show up. But I think that there are people that are looking for that and are willing to walk alongside Christians, even if they don't believe the same things Christians do, to the same end of finding justice and peace in our communities.
Well, and when they get drawn in by people who are doing it together, it's like even something as simple as Vacation Bible School. People may not want to sign up to teach Vacation Bible School, but they want to do something with their friends.
Right.
So they go, let's go up and do VBS together.
Right.
So let's go, do something to change the world together.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I'm excited to be like on this team, is I've gotten to know you a little bit, but I also know Katie and David and Michelle, and I know that heartbeat is with them too, about
absolutely.
Like finding community, making new places for new people, giving those opportunities to get our hands dirty and to grow in our faith. So,
well, I know that team of people is excited to come alongside you and make this happen, and they're pumped.
Yeah.
So that's a really neat thing. You said something to me when we interviewed that really sort of piqued my interest. You said something about we do a lot of work on just sort of creating content. Let's put a sermon out there, or let's do something so that people will listen to it or watch it or even come to it and hear it. But that's a different thing than discipling people.
Yeah.
And what do you mean by that?
Yeah. Yeah, what the image that immediately comes to mind is I think about the probably too many tabs I have open on my web browser right now, like as we speak on my computer, and it's, the Google search bar and Reddit and the, my Twitter feed and my Facebook profile, and then my church's, media, whatever they're putting out,
Right.
their YouTube channel, their video channel, whatever that is. And especially over the pandemic, our people, folks in our churches, that tab is just one tab among many. It's just another piece of content that we're consuming. And I think we noticed at our church, and I know you noticed here at St. Luke's, that like people want so much more depth, want so much more to do, so much more things to be involved in, so many more ways to grow, that just kind of consuming content doesn't really scratch that itch. It doesn't really, in the long haul, doesn't really give a lot of that growth and that opportunity to be alongside one another. Of course, we were in a time where we were discouraged from being next to each other like we are right now. And so it's kind of that next step of like, okay, I've consumed this content, I've created this content. Now, what are we going to do? Who are we going to become? What type of people do we want to be? What sort of community do we want to be? And what are we inviting people to? Are we inviting people to make us one of those tabs they add on their web browser, or are we inviting them to a family, a community, a place where we can rub shoulders and do some good in the world and to grow in our relationship with God? So,
it's I was in a meeting some years ago with a pastor who was a very prominent pastor in our denomination, and he was approaching his retirement, and he said something that has really spoken to me, and part of the reason what you said really jumped out at me. He said, I've spent my life trying to get content from my notebook into their notebook.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I'm not sure I've ever discipled anyone. And I began to ask, oh, wow, I wonder if that's me.
Yeah.
Have I discipled anyone?
Yeah.
And how, I believe that we disciple one another. It's not that there's a pastor who disciples everybody.
Right.
It's that we get in a community and we disciple one another together. And that's what's exciting to me about building a community that's not just about, let's preach a great sermon and have great music and pat one another on the back. Let's really change people and have them walk in a different way.
Yeah.
I think that's neat.
Yeah, and it's like this kind of idea too of, what's the church's role in like formation and like the type of people we become. Like I find myself mad if my 2-day shipping from Amazon is 3 days, like this kind of, I want things to happen quick. I want things to happen overnight. And we're part of a community. We're part of a faith that has the long view, that has the horizon in before us. Like that's the goal. And it takes a long time, and it takes that enduring, patient, perseverant faith of like day in and day out, just adding to that. And so we don't have like a quick Amazon version of what it means to follow Jesus. It's the long haul.
Almost every illustration that Jesus uses of growth, of change, is organic.
Yeah.
It's like a seed growing into all of those steps along the way. A long obedience in the same direction, as Eugene Peterson says. So, hey, this is exciting. I am. You'll be with us on January 15th officially, and we're thrilled about that. And I'm not sure I shared with you that Colin has been the associate pastor of discipleship and evangelism at Memorial Drive United Methodist Church, and he's transferring from one of our teammates. We don't consider them a competitor. They're a teammate in our hard work for the kingdom together. And we're so glad that you'll be here. And I know that St. Luke's will want to greet you warmly.
Yeah, excited to get started, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.